Here we are in Brighton on the May bank holiday, and it's a bit overcast today, isn't it? But there's a great atmosphere. We've got a concert going on over here. I'm sure the police are going to move in at some point to try and stop it, but let's make hay while the sun shines. There's a lot going on at the moment. There's a bit of a lull in people's awareness. It's all died down a bit, but you know, we skeptics know that the authorities are not really going to let us go. You know, they're still carrying on with the agenda. They're carrying on with the digital identity agenda, and they're going to try and clamp down on freedom of speech on the internet. But the big thing that's going on at the moment, of course, is Ukraine. And we've got a Foreign Secretary, Liz Truss, who seems to be going out of her way to ramp up the talk of war and actual provision of weaponry to Ukraine to you know, potentially start what could be a really deadly conflict with Russia. And this seems to be so irresponsible. And what's actually going on? Now, when the Russian tanks rolled into Ukraine, I said right at the outset that this is not really just about Ukraine. And there seems to be a project of destruction going on. It's like the globalists, these unnamed people who seem to be running the world, who seem to be telling every government across the world what to do, with the exception, of course, of Russia at the moment. What are they up to? And I think what's going on with Ukraine is it's being used to promote the agenda of total energy control, advance the agenda of total population control, you know, where we all end up with digital identity and we move towards the Chinese social credit system. What the globalists have always wanted is total control of energy. Now, the whole economic system is at risk of collapse, but that's what they want. They want the economic system to collapse. They want countries to be bankrupted. They want people personally to be bankrupted, because this allows the Great Reset to advance. Now, we know that the big problem with Russia and Ukraine is the supply of gas and oil to Europe, and those supplies have been cut off. Now, if our leaders were really concerned about peace, and if they were really concerned about people's abilities to heat their houses and to feed themselves, if they were really concerned with those things, they would be dialing down the rhetoric with Russia. They would be seeking a peaceful solution, but they're doing the opposite. They seem to be provoking a prolonged and more intense war. And I believe that they are doing this because of what the motive for this is to bring in total energy control. And that means rationing. That means that we don't get to decide how much we consume. All these decisions will be made for us, and we will be basically impoverished by what the globalists are doing. And how do we stop this agenda of destruction? Well, of course, the big problem is people are asleep. You know, we've got this concert today, and it's good to see so many people turn out, but we're still a tiny minority of people who are actually awake to what's really going on in the world. You know, people used to heckle us when we were protesting. You don't get that heckling anymore. But in a way, it's even worse. In a way, it's even worse because people have fallen asleep. And people are accepting, the majority of the population seem to be accepting this narrative about Putin and Russia being the big threat to the world. No, Putin is not the threat to the world. It's our own leaders who are no longer working for us. They're working for this globalist project, this new world order. And new world order is no longer can no longer be disregarded as conspiracy theory. They're actually using the term. They're using the phrase. And they've been using the phrase Great Reset and Build Back Better, Fourth Industrial Revolution. It all points to the same thing, which is what I call technocracy, which is a total control of people and the total control of resources. And somehow we've got to shake people out of their apathy and ignorance. And we're all doing our bit. You know, we've got this gig today. We're all just trying, even if we just talk to 2 or 3 people each and persuade them just to look. And I'll give you one positive example to finish up on. There's a chap in a shop who, my wife goes in the shop often, always has a chat with this guy. And last week he was talking about how terrible it was what Russia was doing in Ukraine. And my wife didn't engage in it too much because she knows that the Ukraine thing is contrived. She went in again yesterday and he's completely changed. And why did he change? He changed because someone like you or me, had sent him a copy of the film Ukraine on Fire, the Oliver Stone film, and it's completely changed his mind. So we've got to do more of that, because we've got to be the change that we want to be. What is freedom of speech? It seems to be a phrase that is looked upon negatively by younger people who've been indoctrinated into believing there's this terrible thing called hate going around and it must be quashed. You know, people must be stopped from saying the wrong thing. But actually, freedom of speech is vital to a democracy. If you haven't got freedom to criticise your leaders, you don't live in a democracy, you live in a dictatorship. And unfortunately, that's the way that things are going, with new laws to curtail freedom of speech, to curtail freedom of assembly, and by definition, to curtail democracy. So all alternative media, independent media, are now at risk because there's going to be more and more clamping down. So for a long time, independent media have had their social media accounts, inhibited, controlled, people barred, but at least you'd be able to keep a website going, or you'd be able to use sites like BitChute and Brand YouTube or Rumble. So there are other outlets that independent media have been able to use, but this is in danger because there's going to be a lot more clamping down on what internet providers do and what independent media people are able to do. Increasingly, there's going to be criminalising of reporting. Simply reporting events, simply telling the truth is going to be criminalised. And we see the way things are going. This disinformation unit in America, with that Yelansky woman, I can't remember her first name, but it's like a ministry of truth. It's straight out of 1984. So independent media have really got to get together and create a safe place for themselves. And I know that there are moves afoot. I'm not up to date with or know the detail about what's going on, but I would thoroughly support any independent media that are working towards ensuring the security of this basic fundamental freedom, which is for them to report what's really going on in the world, because we know the mainstream media are not telling us the truth at all. The mainstream media are telling us lie after lie after lie. So thank goodness we've got independent media at the moment, and we, as members of society, certainly of the freedom movement, need to do our best to help support independent media, help it to keep going, and to make sure that your average person, that their opinions are not just a recital of the propaganda dished out daily by the BBC.